Imagine this. A sunny morning in Oregon. A 19-year-old college student is just doing her summer job. And then she vanishes. The only thing left behind, a pair of torn flip-flops. What happened next was one of the biggest investigations in the state's history, a search that went completely cold. And then, a violent crime, happening 1,400 miles away, would somehow unravel the heartbreaking truth of what happened to Brooke Wilberger.
These are the words of Brooke's sister, Stephanie. And wow, they really cut right to the heart of this story, don't they? This is about a loss so profound, a grief so deep, that time just can't heal it. It's a powerful reminder that behind all the headlines and the police work, there's a family whose entire world was just shattered.
All right, so let's go back to where it all started. Corvallis, Oregon. Monday, May 24th, 2004. It was a beautiful, warm morning. You know, the kind that feels full of promise. But for one bright young woman with her whole life ahead of her, that promise was about to be stolen in the most brutal way imaginable.
Now, before we get any further, I think it's really important we talk about who Brooke was, because she wasn't just a name in a news report, right? She was a 19-year-old student at Brigham Young University studying to become a speech pathologist. She'd actually had a speech difficulty herself as a kid and wanted to help others the way she'd been helped. She was one of 6 kids, known for being kind of quiet, but with this really strong, kind heart. And that summer, she was just working a simple job, cleaning up at the apartment complex her sister managed.
So that morning, at 10 a.m., everything's totally normal. Stephanie sees her sister Brooke outside cleaning lampposts. But then, by 1 o'clock, that little feeling of, that's weird, starts to creep in. Brooke is late for lunch, which just isn't like her. Stephanie goes out to look for her, and she even joked to their kids, okay, let's send the search party out. Can you imagine that moment? When a little joke just curdles into absolute dread? By 3 p.m., they'd found Brooke's car, still locked, with her purse and phone inside. They knew something was seriously wrong, and they called 911.
And the scene they found, it told a terrifying story right away. It wasn't just that she was gone, it was how she was gone. Her cleaning supplies were there, and right next to them, her flip-flops. But they were ripped, the plastic part between the toes was torn, and they were covered in mud. Her sister said it looked like Brooke had been literally dragged out of them, fighting for her life. Police knew from that very first moment this was no simple missing person case.
Yeah, so the discovery of those flip-flops just sends this shockwave of fear through the entire town of Corvallis. Think about it. A young woman likely abducted from a supposedly safe apartment complex in broad daylight. The community was terrified, and what followed was one of the largest searches in Oregon's history. And just to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about here, get this number: 2,000. That's how many registered sex offenders investigators had on a list that they had to find and question in the area. 2,000. It was a monumental, almost impossible task. And, in a flood of potential leads that big, some are going to seem more promising than others. Police really zeroed in on this one guy, Sun-Koo Kim, who had a history of breaking into dorms to steal women's underwear. He lived 80 miles away, but one of the dorms he hit was right near Brooke's apartment complex. It seemed like a solid, though really disturbing, lead. But in the end, receipts and computer data proved he was somewhere else. It was another frustrating dead end.
But while all these leads were going nowhere, one clue just kept popping up again and again: a dark green minivan. Several people reported seeing one driving suspiciously around the university that day. One student said the driver spoke to her and it freaked her out. Another young woman said the same van pulled up, the driver got out and opened the back door, and she just ran. So police have this key vehicle, but no license plate, no description of the driver, nothing.
And just like that, days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into 6 long, agonizing months. The massive volunteer searches start to dwindle. The case fades from the front page. And for Brooke's family and community, the hope that burned so brightly at the beginning, it just starts to dim. And this one terrible question just hangs in the air. Was she even still alive?
And then, right when it seemed like the case was going completely cold, something happens. A frantic 911 call from Albuquerque, New Mexico, 1,400 miles away. An event that seemed totally unrelated was about to reignite the entire investigation and provide the shocking connection everyone had been praying for.
So how did this happen? Well, the breakthrough came from an act of just unbelievable courage. A woman was driving with her kids when she saw a young woman, naked and hysterical, running across a busy road. This was a 22-year-old Russian exchange student who had just escaped a brutal attack. The driver pulled over, got her in the car, and called 911. And that student's incredible will to survive was about to change everything.
Her story was a nightmare. A man had grabbed her from behind at knife point, assaulted her, and tied her up. But then, her attacker made one critical mistake. He left her in the car for just a moment to run into an apartment. In that tiny window of time, she broke free and ran for her life. And because she escaped, she was able to give police a description of her attacker and his car.
Police moved fast. They arrested a 38-year-old married father of 3 named Joel Patrick Courtney. He was a convicted sex offender with a long, violent history. And as one really sharp detective in New Mexico started digging into Courtney's past, he noticed these chilling parallels to that high-profile missing person case up in Oregon. And suddenly, all the pieces started clicking into place.
The first piece of the puzzle? Just simple geography. The detective in New Mexico makes a call to Oregon. They check Courtney's history, and there it is. On May 24, 2004, the exact day Brooke Wilberger disappeared, Joel Courtney had been in the Corvallis area with his family. I mean, what are the odds? It was a stunning coincidence that they just couldn't ignore.
And then came the connection that just sealed it. Investigators tracked down the vehicle Courtney had been driving while he was visiting Oregon. And what was it? You guessed it. A dark green minivan. The same suspicious vehicle that multiple witnesses had reported seeing 6 months earlier. The clue that had gone cold suddenly had a name attached to it.
Okay, so this is where the case goes from circumstantial to completely concrete. A forensics team literally dismantled that minivan, and after months of painstaking analysis, they found it. Brooke Wilberger's DNA. They found her blonde hairs tangled in a hairband inside one of Courtney's bags. The science was undeniable. Brooke had been inside that van, and the DNA also confirmed the horror of what had happened to her. So by July of 2005, Joel Patrick Courtney was charged with 19 counts, including the aggravated murder of Brooke Wilberger. He was facing the death penalty. But there was one enormous, heartbreaking problem. Brooke was still missing, and her family was now faced with an absolutely impossible choice to get her back.
What followed was this grim negotiation. For years, Courtney just played games, denying everything. But he eventually decided he wanted something. So he used the one thing he had as a bargaining chip, the location of Brooke's body. In exchange for telling them where she was, prosecutors agreed to take the death penalty off the table. Her family had to agree to a deal with her killer just for the chance to bring their daughter home.
And with that awful deal in place, Joel Courtney finally led investigators down an abandoned road, about 12 miles from where he took her. And there, concealed under a fallen tree, he had hidden her remains. After 5 long, brutal years of not knowing, Brooke Wilberger had finally been found.
In court, Courtney admitted to the entire horrific sequence of events. He said he'd been out that day looking for a victim. He pretended to be a delivery driver to get close to Brooke, then grabbed her at knife point. He held her overnight in the woods and ultimately bludgeoned her to death, coldly stating that he was surprised by how strong she was and how hard she fought back. And through it all, he showed absolutely no remorse.
Joel Courtney was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. So, legally speaking, justice was served. But for her family and for the entire community of Corvallis that had searched so desperately for her, the loss of Brooke would leave a scar that could never, ever heal. But at a gathering, listen to these powerful words from Brooke's mother, Cammie. It was an incredible show of strength. It was like she was drawing a line in the sand, declaring that they would not let the evil act of one man define their daughter's memory or their community spirit. They chose to focus on love and on doing the good things that Brooke would have done. Ultimately, Brooke's story is one of unimaginable tragedy, but it's also a story of incredible strength. The strength of the young woman in New Mexico who escaped, the strength of the detectives who never gave up, and the strength of a family and a community who just refused to be broken. And it leaves us with a really difficult question. How do we honor the memory of a life taken so violently, not by dwelling on the darkness, but by celebrating the light of the person who was lost?